Welcome back to Capitol Review. I'm Mark Hall. President Trump was asked recently about the importance of upholding the Constitution. Some of his responses were surprising and at times non-committal. So what could this mean moving forward? Joining us now on Capitol Review is Dr. Omekongo Dibinga with Upstander International, and he's also a political science professor at American University. Dr. Dibinga, welcome back.
Thanks for having me.
We're always glad to have you. Recently, Marco Rubio said that every citizen and non-citizen has a right to due process. The president said he's not sure because he's not a lawyer. Your response?
We're seeing different from the last administration with Trump is that everything that's being said right now is deflecting to somebody else in his cabinet. I don't know about Kilmar. I don't know about this. I don't know about interest rates. I'm going to talk to Scott Bessent about it. And he's trying to not take responsibility for anything. Whether you're a lawyer or not, it doesn't matter. The Fifth Amendment doesn't say citizens or non-citizens. It talks about persons. And as the president, you should know that and not have to deflect to other members of your cabinet for clarification.
Well, the Supreme Court even ruled that immigrants should be afforded due process. Right. Anton Scalia even wrote about it back in 1993. Scalia, a well-respected conservative justice.
That's right.
What does that mean on paper, and what does that mean in the world that we live in?
As you said, Scalia was a giant in conservative circles. The fact of the matter is the country is committed to due process, and it's not due process for citizens and non-citizens. It's for anybody. When you have people in a gulag in El Salvador right now, and one person saying, I'm not in a gang, I'm a barber, that person is supposed to get due process, a trial, a hearing, an opportunity to plead their case, and they are denied that. That's supposed to be fundamental. That's why you're even seeing people now at protests and rallies with signs just saying due process, the basic minimum rights that should be afforded to anybody who's in this country, citizen or non.
The Supreme Court ruled that the much talked about case of the Maryland father, Kilmar Abrego Garcia, should be returned. The president said that he could even just make a phone call, and that can happen, but it hasn't.
That's right.
How can this play out in the favor of Kilmar Abrego Garcia?
Donald Trump wants to show, and even though people are out there protesting for Kilmar to be brought home, he believes that anything that's happening on immigration in the news, positive or negative, is a win for him. The way that is going to happen is that these judges possibly need to start holding some of Trump's lawyers in contempt, probably bringing it up to a higher scale in terms of drawing attention towards that. But really, at the end of the day, if he doesn't want to do it, President El Salvador doesn't want to do it, it's not going to happen regardless of what the Supreme Court says.
Well, moving forward, we have three equal branches of government. If the president ignores the Supreme Court, can the president be held accountable? You're talking about maybe holding some of these attorneys in contempt, but can the president of the United States be held accountable, or can that only be done through the legislative process, impeachment?
Well, I don't see how. I mean, we're going to Andrew Jackson territory where, he's basically said, I have the army, who cares what the Supreme Court says, right? Really, at the end of the day, we also have to remember that the Supreme Court empowered Donald Trump with some of the rulings they made last year, giving him so much more power than any president has ever had. So the short answer is, just as J.D. Vance said, if we determine something that's really unconstitutional, they don't really care what the court says, and the court has no enforcement mechanism to do what they want if they say Trump needs to do something and he decides to ignore them. We don't have three branches of government anymore. Congress, House of Representatives gave all their rights over to Trump, and the Supreme Court has empowered Trump. And so really all there is public opinion and people taking to the streets that's going to sway whatever President Trump does, because the courts seem to be irrelevant at the moment.
We've heard Democrats say that we're heading towards a constitutional crisis. Some think that maybe that's an overreach, but is this maybe heading in that direction?
We've been in a constitutional crisis since the insurrection, and we've been in a constitutional crisis since the president, while he was campaigning, said that we should suspend the Constitution based on how they stole the last election. He came in not respecting the Constitution. And so people who say that we're only in a constitutional crisis once he defies the Supreme Court, but he can defy all of these other lower courts like he's been doing this entire time, that's a constitutional crisis to me.
Dr. Dibinga, thank you so very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.